we'll start recording. Okay. So I found this article, which I thought was pretty interesting, called "The Torah on 1 Foot. What is the Torah's core message and purpose?" Um, and I think, let's see, I never know what to do first here, but I think we'll start sharing. Yeah, here's the article. And so is there anybody, maybe Jim, but is there anybody that hasn't heard this concept of explain it to me on 1 foot?
Oh, I
Um,
know that.
you
Sure.
know that one?
Wasn't it Hill? Was it Hillel that said that?
Very good. Very, very good.
Hey, how about that?
That is from the Talmud.
Is that
Um,
a question asked
yes.
at a conversion session? Maybe Jim is partway becoming Jewish.
Well, he's very knowledgeable.
I
You don't
know.
have to be Jewish to be knowledgeable. So so there's yeah, so we'll actually read the story. Yeah, let's read the story, and I think I will read. In a famous Talmudic story, a man asks Shammai and Hillel to convert him, but with one condition. And generally, there are lots of stories about, they're called Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, the house of Shammai and the house of Hillel. Typically, Hillel is always thought of the representative of the common folks and the poor people, where Shammai was more wealthy and representative of the upper class. So let's just read the story, and it's pretty well presented here. It happened that a certain Gentile came before Shammai. He said to him, "Convert me on the condition that you teach me the whole entire Torah while I am standing on 1 foot."
Wow.
And oh, this is something interesting. It says Hebrew regel, likely a word play on Latin, I guess regula or regula, meaning rule. So all the Torah is one short rule. I didn't know that. So I'm going to resist the temptation to check every footnote. So Shammai pushed him out with a builder's cubit, Latin regula, another wordplay that he held in his hand. So Shammai correctly interpreted that this person was sort of making fun of him and being a little outrageous. The Gentile went to Hillel and he converted him. Hillel said, "The whole entire Torah is, what is hateful to you, don't do to your fellow. The rest is commentary. Go and learn."
All right.
So I thought I would actually just show you how this appears in the text. And I think there's not much different, but it's actually one of, I don't know, maybe a half a dozen stories of people coming to Hillel and Shammai and asking outrageous questions, and Hillel is very, very patient. So this is in the Talmud, it's in the Tractate Shabbat, and I thought there was one more interesting one, which is the story just in front of the on 1 foot. And it's a very common Hebrew expression. Well, English expression, sort of in the world of rabbinics. Explain it to me on 1 foot.
He converted him while he was standing on 1 foot.
So he actually, yeah, he said to the potential convert, I'll just scroll down, said, "Teach me the entire Torah while I stand on 1 foot." And it's actually quite often used to say, "Tell me this while you're standing on 1 foot." And beregel echad, and you hear that in sort of Hebrew chit chat all the time. And it's sort of, I think in English we call it the elevator pitch. Give me a pitch that you would give me between, floors 1 and 15 on an elevator. So the section right before it is also interesting. The sages taught there was an incident involving one Gentile who came before Shammai. The Gentile said to Shammai, "How many Torahs do you have?" He said to him, "Two, the written Torah and the oral Torah." The Gentile said to him, "With regard to the written Torah, I believe you, but with regard to the oral Torah, I do not believe you. Convert me on condition that you will teach me only the written Torah." Shammai scolded him and cast him out with a reprimand. The same Gentile came before Hillel, who converted him and began to teach him Torah. On the first day, he showed him the letters of the alphabet, and he said to him, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet. On the next day, he reversed the orders of the letters and told him that an Aleph is a Taf, and so on. So he basically showed him the same letters, but gave them different names. And the convert said to him, but yesterday you did not tell me that. Hillel said to him, you see that it is impossible to learn what is written without relying on an oral tradition. Didn't you rely on me? Therefore, you should also rely on me with regard to the matter of the oral Torah and accept the interpretations that it contains. So basically, he was saying, even knowing what the letters are and how they sound is an oral tradition. So we have to respect oral traditions. We don't have this sense, certainly in Rabbinic Judaism, at the heart of Rabbinic Judaism is this idea of the oral Torah and the Talmud. And there's just a lot of examples. There's the 1 foot, and there's another one. There's a lot of examples of it. I think my recollection is something like a half a dozen of these examples where somebody tries to insult Hillel, but Hillel is always patient and explaining things. So in this article in Torah.com, they say, we asked scholars, how would you describe the Torah's core teachings, mission, or purpose in its original context, or as it's been received in the past or present, with the idea that it's also, I see how they do this. Whoops. Now I'm a little lost. Okay. Yeah. So, and it's very like a 1 paragraph or even 1 sentence description. So they're asking the scholars to summarize the core teaching of the Torah in 1 phrase. And of course, Hillel's phrase, which is worth mentioning, is what is hateful to you, don't do to your fellow, which of course is the golden rule, which in the New Testament, Jesus states it in the positive. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And Hillel states it in the negative. What's hateful to you, don't do to another person. It's an interesting and subtle distinction, which, people have discussed a lot. If you ever just Google the golden rule, you will find scores of different examples of the golden rule in different cultures. Some very similar to this. The one in Islam is very similar to this. There's a native, American one, which is don't poke a baby bird in its eye with a stick until you try poking it in your own eye, or something to that effect. So anyway, there's a lot of discussions of the golden rule. So I just thought we would spend, and I'm sure that we're not going to finish it tonight. Just read some examples of this and discuss what is important. And I don't even recall whether there's a list of who each scholar is. I don't think it's in there. So I don't remember. So at least at the moment, some of us may be familiar with some of these scholars, but I'm not. Maybe in the original article, you could just highlight the name and get a hypertext to their qualification. Yeah, Jim.
Yeah, since we're going to do comments here, the quote by Hillel there, just how brilliant that is. It said, and the rest is commentary, would lead you to believe that, so you don't have to read the Torah, just be nice to people. But he doesn't leave it at that. He says, now go and study.
Right.
That's brilliant.
Yes, go and learn. Zil Gamar. I don't know enough Aramaic to know the literal translations there. But yes, so that's exactly the point. You can summarize it in the phrase, but clearly you need to study and learn, which is, of course, what some of us spend our lives doing. Okay, Alan, go ahead.
Yeah, but Jim reminded me that it takes a lot of understanding of the implication when you read parts of the Bible, and then you're saying, well, how does this apply to what Hillel said? And you probably can do that easily sometimes, and
Hmm.
it will seem like it doesn't apply at all, which is makes this whole standing on one foot thing a little bit challenging, I guess is the nicest way to say it.
Yeah. So, I mean, to be specific, there's a Torah law about not wearing a garment of wool and linen. So it's hard to see how that applies to the golden rule.
How about Akedah?
How about, well, I mean, there's also stories.
Yeah.
And I reflect on this fairly often that the Torah and the Bible are not simply a book of laws, but there's also stories. And the question is, in the stories, is an example of the golden rule. So I would never say that everything in the Torah is a good example of the golden rule. But I like the golden rule. I am very fond of saying my own test for whether a religion is kosher, which in Hebrew means fit or appropriate, is, does it teach that human life is sacred, and does it teach the golden rule? And as far as I'm concerned, whether it's, Buddhism or Hinduism or Christianity or Islam or Shintoism, if it takes those two ideas, then that religion is perfectly okay with me. If it teaches, white supremacism or communism or whatever, and ignores the idea that human life is sacred, then I would say it's not a kosher. Um, okay, so these are pretty brief. So I'm going to ask people to read. I'm just going to go down my list. If you don't want to read, just say pass. So Alan, would you like to read a springboard?
Abraham.
Let's a springboard. This thing. Okay.
Yeah, how are you? I'm right in the
I'm
middle
gonna
of the board portion
mute.
of Torah
Hold
study.
on, I gotta mute Paul. Go ahead.
I'm a big fan of Hillel's summary, so asking for an alternate answer is very difficult. I will offer this. Life is hard and is not always clear what is the right thing to do. Here are some stories and ideas. Discuss amongst yourselves, FYI. I practiced on one foot, and the answer is Tommy Schneider.
And yeah, the author is Tommy Schneider. Yeah, and it's interesting. It's not always clear what the right thing to do is. I would say the Jewish tradition tries to be clear on what is the right thing to do, particularly on ritual issues, not always on ethical issues, which is why, I have a problem with focusing on the ritual at the expense of the ethical. Okay, let's just keep going. Jim, you want to read invites questions?
Invites questions. The Torah may not provide all the answers, nor be the literal word of God, but as the sacred literature of our people, its holiness, is manifest in the profound questions it invites us to ask about our lives, our sense of morality, and our relationship with that which we hold as divine in our lives.
Ron Stern.
He's in, but
sorry.
nor the literal word of God. Okay, all right.
Yeah. So, yeah, I would say certainly in the Jewish tradition, the 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 room is filled with people studying and arguing and going back and forth. If you ever have visited a traditional yeshiva, a traditional Jewish Orthodox study hall, typically people are studying it's called in chavruta. It's an Aramaic word for friends. So there are two people studying and arguing. And arguing is the Jewish method of studying. And you study the text and you argue and you fight back and forth. And there's a tradition that understands it like two swords clashing, and so they sharpen each other. And I certainly find it when we study like this and people raise questions, it sharpens my own thinking because people will raise questions that I haven't thought of. And I would say other traditions aren't like this. That the pastor is telling you what to think and what to do, and your job is to do it. And And I would say one of the things that I hear a lot, both from people who have rejected orthodoxy and from people who have rejected other religions, is the comment that they didn't feel it was okay to raise questions about beliefs and about religion. Jerry.
And that's why in speech and debate, the students had to debate both sides, not just the affirmative, but the negative, to understand and to question their own beliefs and those beliefs that would support them on either case.
Yeah, I do believe it's a wonderful way to study. And one of the characteristics, I was once asked actually to give a little seminar at a law school about characteristics of Jews and Judaism. And one of the characteristics, I don't remember where I got this from, is disputatiousness. Jews love to argue.
No.
And if you disagree with me, I will argue with you about it. And I see it all the time, and it can be harmful because there's a natural tendency. I think I was raised with this, that you say something and people are really, their mind is preoccupied to finding a counterexample and argue against it. And I think that's literally a form of knowledge that Jews were bred to learn. It's very, very Talmudic, but it doesn't always work in the relationship between spouses. That if when one person says X, the first reaction of the other spouse is not X.
There's an expression in some contexts where they say, "Don't try this at home."
Yeah, right. Yeah. So when I
always right.
I'm sorry.
Wife is always right.
Yeah. So I always say in my prenuptial counseling, there are two rules for happy marriage: happy wife, happy life is rule number one. Rule number two is there is no rule number two. See rule number one. But which works now, except when you start getting same gender relationships, or so. But I also do talk about what I call lose-lose arguments, where people argue for the sake of arguing, and if you win the argument, you've hurt the relationship, and if you lose the argument, you've hurt the relationship. So why bother? And it's quite often about a subject that is really not important. Anyway, I don't want to go off on that topic. Paul, I muted you before when you were chatting. So if you want to read A Living System, unmute yourself and read.
Or not.
Yeah, Paul, you're muted. I think I can actually. Oh,
Yeah,
now you.
there you go.
Okay, good.
What were you saying?
Yeah, would you read for us A Living System?
Sure. A living system. The key to the Torah lies in its reception among the Jewish people. It is a dynamic, living system that informs and regulates both individual lives and the collective fabric of Jewish society. The Torah is predicated on its ever-evolving interpretation and implementation by those who have adopted it as their guide. It manifests in the rituals performed, the stories told, the moral teachings imparted, and the life choices made. It exists in the vibrant discourse and debate over its meaning and practical application. The Torah lives through a living people.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, that's one of I often talk when I introduce the idea to people that may not be familiar with the oral tradition. I mean, for a long time, if you take the Jewish teaching traditionally, for about 1,400 years or so, 1,400, no, yeah, 1,400 years, the oral Torah was in oral form. It was never written down, and it's sacred scripture. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of not writing something down? The disadvantages are easy. It's the old game of telephone. As you tell someone something, it can change. The advantage, I think, is kind of captured here, and that is that if you discuss it, like we discuss it both in these weeknight evenings and Saturday morning, you have to apply it to your own time. I think, Paul, you're a perfect person to read that section, because you're always applying what we study in Talmud to your own life. And so it becomes a living document that's not just something etched in stone or even just written on a page, but it is something that is living. And as you discuss it, you apply it to your own
I
times.
carry those edicts or whatever the Torah teaches inside me and use them on a daily basis if I can.
Yeah. But and what this is saying is, not only do you carry it, I mean, certainly for an oral Torah, you have to discuss it. The
Right.
reason it was finally written down is that the rabbinic schools were so harassed that the leading rabbi, Yehuda Hanasi, feared that the oral tradition would be lost. So he wrote it down in a book called the Mishnah. So you have to discuss it.
Every once in a while I see the movie called Yentl. Yentl is with Barbara Streisand.
Yeah.
And it's a great movie, and it goes into all the bickering back and forth with the Jewish people. And some written, some not written, but it's amazing.
But it is the way traditional Jews study.
What I thought was
very go ahead, Stephen, and then Jim.
Strange watching that movie right after Proposition H was that the character who's supposed to be way ahead of her time and modern in her thinking is the one who is scoffing at the idea that a same-sex wedding has any significance. And it is the person who was portrayed as being backwards in his thinking, even by standards of 100 years ago, who is taking it seriously as a real thing.
I don't remember the details of it. And you said Proposition H, not Preparation H?
I said 8, the number.
Oh, 8. I don't remember what that was. Was that?
It was a California ballot proposition about same-sex marriage. But the plot of the movie involves someone who is actually female, pretending to be male in order to study Talmud. Right. And at one point, somebody arranges for her to marry someone who is actually female, not realizing that she's female. And eventually she just realizes she's in too deep over her head and tells the guy who is actually in love with the woman that she is married what's going on, that I'm not really a man, and that you can marry her now because she's never actually married a man, and who's actually a man. And he says it's not that simple. There were witnesses, and she says, "So what? Witnesses to what? A wedding of two women?" And
I don't remember the details of the movie, but it was very good. I think it was another Shalom Aleichem story, if I'm not mistaken.
I'll move on to a living system. A living system.
You I think just read that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So, Jim, you have your hand up.
Yeah. Now, I know that Jews hold the Torah in higher regard than, say, the prophetic books and the poetry books and things.
Yes.
But you refer to the oral Torah, which is the Mishnah. So is the Mishnah held in the same regard as the Torah? It's just the oral versus the written?
No. So I would say the written Torah is held in the highest regard. And one of the reasons is, or the logic as I understand it, is that the Torah itself describes it as the literal word of God that God dictated to Moses and told Moses to write down. So if you look at the prophets, for example, it's the story of Isaiah. And, some of it is God talking to Isaiah, and some of it is Isaiah wandering around and stuff like that. So it's not all considered to be the words of God. And with the Mishnah, I mean, it is the oral revelation given by God to Moses, written down in theory. But I don't think there is a sense that it is as we are certain of its literal accuracy, word for word, as we are of the Torah. So I would say written Bible probably is held in higher regard than Talmud. But of course, the written Bible doesn't help us practice Judaism these days, because, in the written Bible, there's no example of liturgy and prayer and so on. So the written Bible doesn't address the issue of how you are to be Jewish without a temple. And if you study Talmud, you realize first of all, there's a lot of just crazy stuff in Talmud. And also there's a lot of oral law which directly contradicts itself. And the rabbis are falling all over themselves to reconcile the contradictions. So I would say certainly in the Reform movement, the Talmud is nowhere near, and the Mishnah is nowhere near as significant as the Torah. And I would guess, among, let's just say, non-Orthodox Jews, if you ask them what is the Talmud and what is the Mishnah, most of them would not have any idea. They might have heard of it, and they might have seen Yentl, but they would not have any idea what it's about.
Okay.
So
they would. Well, a lot would know the Mishnah has 6 books, but only because they remember 5 books of the Torah, 6 books of the Mishnah from.
So that's yeah. There are 6 actually orders of the Mishnah, and but I suspect that same person wouldn't have any idea what the Mishnah is and what an order of the Mishnah is.
Yeah, that was my point. Actually, was that they would know the number from the song.
Right. Alan.
So, revealing my ignorance, because I always get confused, can you, in a sentence each, define
on one foot?
Well, a sentence or so on the Talmud, the Mishnah, and there's 3 parts to this, right? I think
3 parts to what?
Well, what we're talking about, not the Torah, but the rabbinic Jewish pieces. Talmud, Mishnah, and the other one.
So okay, so here we go.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so the myth is, the sacred myth is that when Moses was on Mount Sinai, Moses got 2 revelations, written Torah and oral Torah. Okay. He wrote down the written Torah, he did not write down the oral Torah. And the oral Torah was then passed on orally for generations. And again, if you take the dates, the mythical date of Sinai is 1200 BCE. The date we know of when Yehuda HaNasi wrote down the oral Torah, namely the book of the Mishnah, is 200 Common Era, so it's 1400 years in between. I don't have the foggiest idea how accurate that is.
2 temples later, so to speak.
Two temples later, and a lot of time when there was no temple.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, here's the story. There's an oral Torah, and people are memorizing it and discussing it. And in the year 200, after 2 or 3 unsuccessful revolts against Rome, the leading rabbi of the time, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, in the year 200 Common Era, so 200, what we would say AD, Anno Domini, decides that if he doesn't write down the essential part of the oral Torah, it will be lost. So he takes what he thinks is the most important part of the oral law, and he writes it down in, I have it on my bookshelf, a book called the Mishnah. And in English translation, it's about 800 pages. Okay, so it's probably longer than the Bible in its volume. Okay. And so that's the Mishnah. But we know, so then for the next few hundred years, the rabbis in Babylon and in the Holy Land sit around and discuss the Mishnah. And the record of their discussion is carefully edited and written up. And the discussion is called the Gemara. Okay. So
that's
you have
not
Mishnah,
to be confused with Gomorrah, the city.
Gemara.
Yes. And so you have the Mishnah and the Gemara, and together they are the Talmud.
Oh, together they're the Talmud.
Yes,
okay.
The word the concept of Talmud is a page. Is a book or whatever, and that book contains typically a little block of Mishnah, and if you're a student of this stuff, it's easy to read because it's in Hebrew. And then there's a long discussion. It could go on for pages and pages and pages and pages, typically in Aramaic, of that little section of the Mishnah. Okay. So this is a great diversion, and I apologize for taking so much time, but what the hell? So the perfect example of this is in the Mishnah, there is a statement, there are 39 categories of work. Actually, it says 40 less one, okay? And then it proceeds to name those 39 categories. And it's cutting and shearing and sifting and writing 2 letters and starting a fire and putting out a fire. And they're just very short phrases. The Mishnah is written like terse legalistic material. That's Mishnah. The Gemara is going to question everything about the Mishnah. They would be doing what we do here. So, for example, the first question that the Gemara raises after the 39 categories of work is, why state the number? With the idea that this is holy text, if we wanted to know how many categories of work there are, we could count them, right? So the fact that the Mishnah actually states that there are 40 less one must have significance. And they debate that and they come up with a significance of that. Okay. And they will debate every other element of the Mishnah, and they can go on for pages and pages and pages. And I even came up, I don't think I've ever heard anyone talk about this. Why say 40 less one rather than 39? Because typically in the Bible, the term 40 means a lot. Moses was on Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights. It rained, on Noah's Ark for 40 days and 40 nights. And there are a lot of judges, when you read the book of Judges, that reigned for 40 years. So it was a lot, but not quite a lot. It's 40 less one. And so that carries, I would say, a Jewish significance that simply the number 39 doesn't. So that's what's going on. And the Talmud, with its commentaries and things, would be like 17 or 18 good sized volumes. And with a lot of translation and English commentary, like the one we study on Saturday mornings with Lisa Bach, it's in 70 volumes. So it's I often say the Talmud is like our New Testament, but it's much more, much longer and much more complicated. So I hope that answer is helpful. But I have to say, most Jews have never heard those words and are surprised and sometimes shocked. And I also had the example of someone being upset when they learned this, because I remember as a woman, grew up Jewish, was bat mitzvah, was confirmed, and never understood that our religion really isn't the religion of the Hebrew Bible, but the religion of the Talmud. And she was, to put it bluntly, she was pissed, because how could she be what she thought was a knowledgeable Jew and not know what I was asserting was a central teaching of Judaism? Alan.
So the danger of being online and having this discussion is what I'm about to say. So
Yep.
I looked up the gematria of 39, and I got
Yep.
one answer called Hashem Echad.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I know. And I don't know if that connects.
Actually, I don't.
30 minus one.
I actually, but it's Hashem, not Yod He Vav He Echad.
It's not. Yeah,
No,
no,
it's not Hashem. Because Shen. No, I don't.
Well,
I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
Okay, fair enough.
But anyway,
Lamed Tet is what they're using is the Hebrew version.
Yeah, Lamed Tet would be 39.
Yeah, and so maybe there's a little liberty in
yes,
in all this.
Okay.
But, okay, fair enough. Go ahead.
39 is 13 times 3.
Okay.
Okay.
And so 13 is for mitzvah years, divine attributes.
Yeah. So,
good. I like that one too.
Yeah,
Good.
I like that. Okay. As a reward, Stephen, you get to read an anthology.
An anthology. The Torah has no core teaching. It is an anthology often containing one statement and its very opposite. That is why it has survived. Each person may accentuate a particular set of teachings or stories. The Jewish first century Gospel of Matthew recognizes that the Torah cannot be reduced to a single principle when both love of God, Deuteronomy 6:5, and love of neighbor, Leviticus 19:18, are declared the greatest commandments. Matthew 22:34-40, see Mark 12:28-34, and Luke 10:25-28. We celebrate the Torah's diversity, never condensing it to one pithy saying, and should use this diversity as a model for accepting both and rejecting either or perspectives.
Yeah, and Mark Brettler is a Jewish scholar of New Testament and a Jewish scholar of Bible. So I happen to be familiar with his name. So I think, Jim, you'll recognize, I think in these references, Jesus is asked what are the most important commandments, and he says, I think both love God and love your neighbor.
Yeah, he says love God, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself is what he says.
Right.
But the
Right.
first question, the Torah has no core teaching.
Well, I think what he is saying is there's no simple phrase which covers the entire Torah.
In spite of what Hillel said?
Yes. So
okay.
So he said, well, what does Hillel say? Hillel says,
don't do what is harmful to somebody else.
Yeah, okay. So Hillel says,
what is harmful to you?
He says, teach me the entire Torah, the convert says, while I stand on one foot. And Hillel says, what's hateful to you, do not do to someone else. Well, he says that's the entire Torah. It says, Zohi kol haTorah kula. Yeah, that's pretty good translation. That one I can read, even though I'm not sure if that's in Hebrew. It actually looks like Hebrew. Adayan perushihu. However, make midrashes, perusha, study it, interpret it, and go study. Gamor, Zil Gamor. So yeah, Hillel is basically saying the core principle is the golden rule, and Mark Butler is saying you can't summarize it to one core principle. I mean, that's his opinion, and he takes a little short paragraph to say so. Okay. And we study it, and when we study Torah, we're often seeing that it's one place we're getting the message, don't sacrifice children. And another case, we have Jephthah's daughter, who Jephthah sacrifices his daughter. So Brettler is a scholar, and that's his interpretation. Jerry, would you like to read to each their own Torah?
To each their own Torah. Torah literally learning, instruction, rule means many things to many people. As a body of literature, it means Pentateuch, expanded, the Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim, Apocrypha, why not? Also, oral Torah, first as an idea, then as a means of handing down tradition, finally, as an expanded universe of a huge body of literature. But Torah is also Torah-inspired behavior. Excuse me?
No, I coughed, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
See Hillel.
Torah-inspired, see Hillel, a Torah-inspired way of life, Torah-inspired lyrics, literature, and music, studying Torah as an exercise in faith and or in intellect, knowing the land of the Bible, to each her or his own Torah, each. Huh?
Well, just finish, and then we'll find out what the source of the groan.
Each of which has a leg to stand on.
Okay.
Has no leg, has a leg to stand on.
Each of which has a leg to stand on.
Yeah.
So basically, I mean, he is commenting that when we say the word Torah, the word Torah literally means instruction.
Right.
And it actually comes from a root which means to aim an arrow. So from the same root as Torah, we have the word moreh or morah, which means teacher. So it's an instruction, and actually, what I'm giving you now my Torah on these commentaries. So we say the blessing before we study this evening, even though we're not technically studying the first 5 books. And on Saturday mornings, we say the blessing before we study Talmud. So I would say anytime you seriously study Jewish sacred material, it's appropriate to say the blessing. So I think, he's saying it's such a huge body of literature that, I mean, he didn't say it outright, but it's pretty hard to summarize it in one phrase.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if Cindy or Ben, if you're there and would like to read, you can speak up. And if you don't, I will ask, I'll read. So, not hearing you speaking up, I will read. The light behind the spectrum. Millions of Jews read the Torah on one foot. Rashi couldn't bear the anthropological pivot of Zen masters Hillel's, what is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. He insisted God remains central, interpreting your fellow as the divine. Don't forsake your friend and turn your father's friend. Don't forsake your friend and your father's friend. Yet Ben Bag was right in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. Turn it and turn it, for everything is in it. Torah is a white light, its meaning refracted through the prism of interpretation. Each sees a different color, each reads according to their strength. Blessed is the one who glimpses the light behind the spectrum. And I don't know this scholar, but I like it. I often think of Torah as Rorschach, if you know what I mean by Rorschach. Rorschach is what psychologists would do, ink blots, and you would interpret what the ink blot is meaning. When we study Torah together, I learn a lot about the personalities of the people who are studying, and their interpretation of the text, that we're all reading the same text, but their interpretation of the text is highly reflective of their own, take on life and position and experience.
Exactly.
Paul, you have
I was
hand
going
up.
to say pretty much the same thing. When it's given orally, when the Torah is recited orally, you may stumble on some parts of it, and it may not be the same twice. Somebody may hear one thing different, and another person may hear another thing different. But your comment about reading in a book is also significant because you can misinterpret the words of the book and even come up with a different answer than oral. You can mess it up either way. So I don't know how you do it, but somebody has to be the arbiter of what happens when you do either oral or book reading.
Well, so the question is, does somebody have to be the arbiter, or can we live with different interpretations?
Yes.
So, I think the imagery here is breaking light into its various colors, and so you need a tool for doing that. You need a prism or a diffraction grating or something,
Right.
and then we can each study a different color of the light,
Right.
but understanding there's a unity behind it. So whether we hear it orally or we read it, we still skip over sections
We do.
and we hear different things. And then, of course, one of the things that, having spent time and years learning Hebrew and also reading commentaries that focus on Hebrew, not just the English translation, there are plays on words, there are
Right.
rhymes, there are all kinds of things going on in the Hebrew that you miss if you just read it in translation. So in theory, that probably comes from the oral tradition, but it's written down now, but you still miss it if you don't,
You still miss it.
if you read it in another language. It doesn't matter whether the other
Yes.
language is English or Latin or Greek or whatever. So there's a lot going on there.
There is.
And as I often say, it's wonderfully ambiguous, which is why it can give rise to Christianity or and Rabbinic Judaism, the same text, because we interpret it differently. And part of that, the reason behind that, I believe, is the fact that Christianity is reading the Hebrew Bible in Greek and focusing on the Greek translation rather than the original Hebrew. Alan.
So, and not being a rabbi, but I find it very fascinating with Safaria. If everybody hasn't used it, they should. Is you can highlight pretty much any word in their library, and it pushes you out to some commentary. Some of it's in Hebrew, and so you can't always read it, but you can get dozens of interpretations and commentary on any pretty much any word in Safaria. It's a kind of a fascinating library online,
Yeah,
free.
and it's amazing. I just gave them some money today.
Yeah,
So
me once in a
so
while I do that
yeah,
too.
so here's an example of Safaria, and if I highlight this section, you see a whole bunch of resources, and then I can say, look, I don't know what the word zeal means. So I double click on it, and it means to be worthless, flow of water, cheapness. So I don't even know what it's Gomorrah. Uh, I don't even know what that phrase means there. So I still have a question. But there also is a lot of, there's just uh, commentary,
Yeah,
different translations and so on. But I also love and appreciate reading a commentary that points out some of these particular Hebrew aspects, which you won't necessarily even see if you're reading here carefully. So, for example, trying to think of a good example. Um, well, a good sort of simple example is in the Garden of Eden. The snake is described as being clever, and the word for clever is arum, but the word for naked is arumim. So there's a pun between the snake being clever and then the fact that they're going to discover their nakedness. And a Hebrew reader who really knows the Hebrew would notice that. I wouldn't notice that because my Hebrew isn't quite as good as others. So I appreciate a commentary that points that stuff out, and it goes on and on. Um, so I agree with Paul. There's a lot going on there, and some of it is just reading carefully. I mean, one of the things that we do here um, is is read we read texts. Sometimes we'll just go into a text and we just read it carefully, like we read the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, very carefully, focusing on each line. And when you're sort of reading, just Bible study, it's easy to skip over a lot of material. So some of it is just reading carefully. Okay, so Alan, would you like to? We have a few more minutes. We'll read a little more because otherwise we're never going to get through this. But it's easy. It takes the pressure off of me for having to find new material. Breathe life into Torah. Breathe our life into.
Torah is cold water that slakes thirst, takes the breath away from the first plunge, a garden fountain, well of living waters, streams flowing from I'm going to say Lebanon, right?
Yeah. Yes.
That way, Lebanon. I teach my students as they swim to trust their own buoyancy with the text. When we dive deep in
Contextual.
contextual waters with the Briggs something whatever BDB.
Briggs driver.
I know what
Briggs.
it is.
Yeah.
It's sort
Yeah.
of dictionary or condolence,
Concordance.
concordance. Eventually, we return to the present to breathe new life into text. We have no gills, yet, like a water mammal, must surface for air. For the Torah is not in the heavens or beyond the sea, but the word is very near to you in your mouth and in your heart to do.
Yes. So
In your
that's a
heart.
quote from Deuteronomy. Um, yeah. So I like the idea. I think they talk about the ocean or the sea of Talmud. I think there's a book or two which describes it. And there's a discussion. This reminded me of there's a discussion of the word, what is a barucha? So barucha is a prayer which begins with the word Baruch. Baruch atah Adonai, blessed are you Adonai. So there's a book that talks about that structure and asks the question, where does the word Baruch come from? And one example is it may be Berech, because a Berech is your knee. So the idea is when you pray, you bend your knees. But it could also, there's another word, brecha, and brecha is a pool of water. And it's like jumping into a pool of water because it heightens your awareness. Like you're just going to have, a piece of bread. So a piece of bread is a piece of bread. It's no big deal. But if before you have a piece of bread, you heighten your awareness that this is actually a gift from God and you have to say a blessing and so on and so on. So anyway, that's what that reminded me of.
So I wonder if you can stop before you go ahead.
Sure.
Since I'm not smart enough to know what slakes mean, but
Oh,
looking
yeah,
at
that's slake. Slake means to
quench.
relieve thirst. Yeah, quench,
Yeah,
right.
quench. Why would an author not use a more familiar word? It's all right.
Hey,
I
if you got a PH, in the words of that great scholar, I'm pretty sure it's Mel Brooks, from the movie and show The Producers. If you got it, flaunt it.
Yeah, okay. I thought it might be because she's an investor in Google, and every click gets
Yeah,
money.
no, but what word would you use instead of slakes?
Quench.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, so quench also has the connotation of putting something out like a fire. But anyway, slaking thirst is actually a very good word. I actually
The Google search also says satisfy search. It would
okay,
be okay.
okay,
It's okay. I'm
okay.
sorry. I
No,
took
that's
it.
okay. Okay, so Jim, you want to read? This is a slightly longer one. See who's writing it. Dahlia Marks. Okay.
New as old and old as new. Return us to you, O Eternal, and we shall return. Renew our days as of old.
And that's actually part of the liturgy. When we put the Torah away, we say, Hashivenu Adonai. Something Elecha Chadesh Chadesh Yamenu Chadesh Yamenu Kekedem. So anybody that's going to services a lot would recognize that phrase. I think it's from Zechariah, but I'm not sure. Okay.
Rabbi,
Oh, Book of Lamentation.
I'm gonna have to cut out. I
Okay.
have an important call to make.
Okay. Okay. We're just going to finish this section and then we'll call it a night. So sorry, this is the penultimate.
This is the penultimate verse in the Book of Lamentations,
Right. Mm-hmm.
but in synagogue life, it is repeated after the final verse so that the book ends on a positive note. After describing the horrors of destruction comes a request to return, to renew and be renewed as of old. The sages are divided on the question of which period is referred to in this verse, and they offer several suggestions.
So this is from the Midrash on this section.
But it seems that the verse itself doesn't refer to a specific period, but rather to an eternal and intense yearning for youth, for clear and young thinking. This specific kind of youth is one of renewal through returning to an ancient well of sweet waters. Good grief. The word kedem, as of old, means an ancient period, but it also contains within it the idea of progress. Both of these concepts are encapsulated in the word as referring to the East. I'll leave that to you.
Yeah, as in per line Ketikva, Lafe Mizrach, Kadima, Ayin, Letzion, Sophia. Okay.
And to the eastern quarters eastward, and eye gazing toward Zion.
That's
That
what that
is
means.
the land of Israel, not necessarily as a geographic location or political entity, but as an intention, a direction, and a commitment to a life of meaning, a life of, quote, old age and youth, gray hair and dawn, unquote. A life in which, quote, the old will be renewed and the new will be sanctified, unquote.
Okay. So that's a little complicated, but I think basically her sense of what Torah is kind of renewing yourself by going back to the good old days of Israel and text study. That's really what I'm
Oh,
getting out of her sense. And the Book of Lamentations was written as a response to the exile to Babylon. So at the end of that book, the people who are exiled and at the shores of the river are being, are asking God to return us to the Holy Land. Alan.
So, for those of you who don't know, the Hatikva it's the Israeli national
Right.
anthem, and it's right in the middle that this statement is
Yes.
made about, and that's why it jumps out to somebody like me who knows enough about the anthem that Rabbi
Mhm.
Marks is a friend of mine. How she brings it in to make this explanation. I really like that.
Yeah. And basically, the idea of Hatikva is this concept of Jews yearning for Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel.
The word
It's
is
not,
right. I mean,
I'm
that's
sorry?
the meaning of Hatikva is the hope.
Yes, yes, it's
Just
tikva means hope.
and then
So
has
it's the
yeah.
it becomes the national anthem of Israel because it's, in a sense, Israel is the realization of that hope, which, is very much a part of Jewish understanding since the destruction of the temple in the year 70, when the Jews are exiled from the land, and there's always this desire to return.
so
Yeah.
that's what she thinks that's her interpretation of what the Torah is.
So I would say her reflection on the Torah is, um, it is, I mean, I didn't read it as carefully preparing for this as we're reading it now, but returning to an ancient well of sweet waters. So there is something sweet and powerful in my way of thinking of spending this time knowing that there's a 2,000 to 3,000 year old tradition of people doing exactly what we're doing now, struggling with sacred text.
And
I
I would
mean,
oh sorry.
yeah, no, I mean, when we study Torah and we study Talmud, that's exactly what the rabbis were doing 2,000 years ago. Um, same texts, Alan.
So to the comment that did Dahlia mean, is this the alternate to the Hillel thing? I read these series, Rabbi and everybody, that these are complementary. They're like jigsaw puzzles that it's not one answer. They kind of all work together and they make a more complete story than, I guess I can't stand on my foot long enough to the whole thing, but
Yep.
I like the set of things, and I don't get too caught up on the fact you have to do
Well,
it one of them. Yeah.
there is power in. I'll stop sharing. There is power in trying to summarize something complicated quickly and succinctly. You've probably heard me talk about this. I've given sermons about it. I dabbled with the idea of writing a book about it called What I'm Learning About Life at Funerals. I probably have 40 pages of notes. And basically, I was writing down phrases of how people describe their loved ones at a funeral. So, the scene is grandpa died, grandma died, mom died, whomever. And someone gets up and they have a fairly short period of time. Not everybody does it in a short period of time. But the theory is you have a short period of time in which to describe, what's the key meaning of mom or dad or grandma or grandpa to you. And people come up with just some amazingly beautiful stuff. And, if I had more energy and ambition, I would write it up as a book. Uh, but some of them are quite beautiful. So there is power. So, and they're clearly not all the same thing. And even people speaking about the same person aren't going to come up with the same statements. So anyway, I thank you. So we'll meet again next Wednesday. We'll see how this goes. If we keep getting fewer and fewer people, I'll abandon this and come up with something juicier. But But anyway, thank you
I think the
for,
attendance is the end of the summer factor, not the content.
who knows? Who knows?
Who knows, right?
Yeah, it's the end of summer, or actually beginning of the school year in a lot of
I
places.
think Governor Greenbaum once said when attendance wasn't very good because of bad weather, he made some statement saying when the weather is bad, people don't go to Shabbat services, and the weather is good, they don't go to Shabbat services because they
Right.
have something else. So you there's no answer to this.
Exactly. Exactly.
But
Anyway,
I'm defending the idea of the shortage. That's all.
okay. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time.
Hey, good night.
And we
Yeah.
don't have a class next Monday. I'll just remind you of that.
Okay.
Okay, Labor Day.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Bye-bye.